Don't worry, those two words are easy to say. But when your chest feels tight, your thoughts are racing, and your heart is overwhelmed, they can feel almost impossible to live by. Because stress doesn't come from nowhere. It comes from uncertainty, from fear of what might happen, from trying to control things that were never in our control to begin with. And that is exactly where the problem begins. We live as if everything depends on us, our future, our success, our relationships, even the outcomes of things we desperately want. We plan, we calculate, we overthink every possibility. And when things don't go the way we imagined, we spiral into anxiety. But the truth is, this constant state of stress is not a sign that you care more. It's a sign that somewhere deep inside you've started to rely more on yourself than on Allah. Trusting Allah is not a passive idea. It's not just a phrase we say when everything is already going well. Real trust is tested when things are unclear. When doors close. When you're standing in the middle of a situation and you have no idea what comes next. That is when your heart is asked a very simple but very heavy question. Who do you believe is in control? Allah reminds us in the Quran that whoever puts their trust in Him, He will be enough for them. Not partially enough, not sometimes enough, completely enough. But we often struggle with this because we want to see the outcome first. We want guarantees. We want reassurance before we let go. And yet, Tawakkul, true reliance, means you let go before you see. Think about it. Every single thing that is causing you stress right now is something that Allah already knows. Not only does He know, but He has allowed it to happen. And not a single moment of your life escapes His wisdom. Even the delays, even the disappointments, even the things that make no sense to you, they are all part of a plan that is far greater than your limited understanding. So why do we keep carrying? This weight as if it's ours to carry. Part of learning to stop stressing is recognizing your role and your limits. You are responsible for your effort, your sincerity, your choices, but you are not responsible for the results. Outcomes belong to Allah. When you blur that line, stress takes over. When you respect that boundary, your heart begins to find peace. This doesn't mean you stop trying. It doesn't mean you become careless. In fact, it means the opposite. You do your best with excellence, ask with ihsan, and then you hand over the results with full certainty that whatever Allah chooses is what is best for you, even if it doesn't feel that way in the moment. And this is where many of us struggle, because we have attached our idea of good to specific outcomes. We think if I get this job, it's good. If this relationship works, it's good. If this problem goes away, it's good. But Allah sees what you don't see. What you are asking for might actually harm you. And what you are trying to avoid might be the very thing that brings you closer to Him. Sometimes stress is a sign that your heart is too attached to the dunya, that your sense of security is coming from things that were never meant to give you security. Because real peace doesn't come from everything going your way. It comes from knowing that no matter what happens, you are under the care of Allah. So how do you actually begin to trust? You start by reminding yourself of who Allah is. He is Al-Wakil, the one who manages all affairs perfectly. He is Ar-Rahman, whose mercy surrounds you even when you don't feel it. He is Al-Hakim, the most wise, who never makes a mistake. When you truly reflect on His names, your perspective begins to shift. You realize that you are not dealing with randomness. You are dealing with a Lord who is precise, intentional, and deeply caring. Then you turn to Him, not just with your tongue, but with your heart. You make dua not because it guarantees the exact outcome you want, but because it connects you to the one who knows what you need. You place your worries before Him. You admit your Arabic dada, Arabic teen, Arabic fa, your weakness, and you ask Him to carry what you cannot. And slowly something changes. The situation around you might not immediately improve. The problem might still be there, but your heart becomes lighter because you are no longer carrying it alone. Stress thrives in a heart that feels like it has to control everything. But peace enters a heart that knows it doesn't. So next time you feel overwhelmed, pause and ask yourself, am I trying to take on a role that belongs only to Allah? Am I holding on to something I was never meant to hold? And then gently release it. Do what you can. Tie your camel. Take the steps that are in your control. And then, with full certainty, leave the rest to Allah. Because the one you are trusting is not limited. He is not unaware. He is not late. He is not careless. He is Allah. And when you truly place your trust in Him, you will find that the thing you were chasing all along, peace, was never in the outcome. It was always in the trust. Stress has a way of convincing you that everything depends on you. It whispers that if you don't figure it out, if you don't plan perfectly, if you don't hold everything together, then things will fall apart. So you start carrying what was never meant for you to carry. You replay conversations, you imagine outcomes, you try to predict every possibility, thinking that somehow this will protect you. But instead of finding peace, you find yourself more overwhelmed, more anxious, and more exhausted. At the heart of this is a subtle but powerful misunderstanding. The belief that you are in control of things that were never placed under your control. You were given responsibility, yes, but not ownership of outcomes. There is a difference between doing your part and trying to control the entire picture. And when that line becomes blurred, stress takes over your heart. Ask about the things that keep you up at night, the future you cannot see, the decisions of other people that you cannot change, the opportunities you are waiting for, the fears of loss, failure, or disappointment. None of these are fully within your control. Yet your mind treats them as if they are your responsibility to manage, solve, and secure. And that is where the burden becomes too heavy. When you try to control what is beyond you, you are stepping into a space that belongs only to Allah. He is the one who knows what is hidden and what is apparent. He is the one who controls hearts, circumstances, and outcomes. He is the one who sees the entire picture, while you only see a small piece of it. So when you insist on controlling everything, it's not just unrealistic, it's exhausting, because you are taking on a role you were never meant to fulfill. This doesn't mean you become passive or careless. Islam does not teach you to abandon effort. You are required to act, to plan, to make decisions, and to strive. But after that effort is made, there is a moment where you have to release your grip. A moment where you acknowledge that no matter how much you try, the final result is not yours to decide. And this is where trust begins. Trusting Allah is not just a comforting idea, it is a shift in how you carry your life. It means you do what you can with sincerity and excellence, but you refuse to let your heart become attached to controlling the outcome. You understand that. Whatever happens next is already written, already known, and already measured with wisdom. When you internalize this, something inside you softens. The urgency to control everything begins to fade. The constant what-if questions lose their intensity. You still care, you still try, but you are no longer suffocating under the weight of needing everything to go a certain way. Because deep down, you begin to realize that the one in control is far more capable than you will ever be. There is a common misunderstanding when it comes to trusting Allah. Many people think it means stepping back, doing nothing, and simply waiting for things to fall into place. But that is not trust, that is avoidance. True tawakkul is far more active, far more intentional, and far more demanding on the heart. It requires you to move, to strive, to make decisions, and at the same time, to release your attachment to the results of those efforts. You are asked to put in your effort with sincerity, excellence, to use the abilities Allah has given you, to think, to plan, to seek advice, to take the necessary steps. Whether it's pursuing an opportunity, working toward a goal, or trying to resolve a difficulty, your role is to show up fully, not half-heartedly, not lazily, but with commitment and eyes and doing things in the best way you can, because your effort is part of your accountability. But here is where the shift happens. Once you have done your part, you do not let your heart cling to what comes next. You do not measure your worth by the outcome. You do not allow your peace to depend on whether things go exactly as you hoped. Instead, you hand over the result to Allah with full certainty that whatever He chooses is the right outcome, even if it doesn't align with your expectations. This balance is not easy. The nafs wants control. It wants guarantees. It wants to feel secure by knowing exactly how things will unfold. So it keeps pulling you back into overthinking, into analyzing every possible scenario, into trying to predict and manage the future. And when the outcome is delayed or different from what you wanted, it creates frustration, disappointment, and sometimes even doubt. But Tawakkul calls you to something higher. It asks you to trust not only when things make sense, but especially when they don't. It asks you to believe that Allah's wisdom is at work even in outcomes you struggle to accept. Because the reality is you are limited in your knowledge. Ask you a vision, and your understanding of what is truly good for you. What you want today may not serve you tomorrow. What you fear today may actually protect you from something far worse. When you truly internalize this, your relationship with outcomes begins to change. Success is no longer just getting what you wanted. Success becomes knowing that you fulfilled your role and left the rest to Allah. Failure is no longer defined by an unfavorable result. Failure becomes neglecting your effort or losing your trust in Him. This way of living brings a different kind of peace. You still work hard, you still care deeply, but your heart is not constantly shaken by every shift in circumstances. Because you are no longer tying your emotional state to things that were never in your control to begin with. Instead, your heart becomes anchored in something Arabic alif, Arabic ba Arabic da, something firm and unchanging. The knowledge that Allah sees your effort, that He understands your intentions, and that He is managing the results in a way that is perfectly aligned with His wisdom and mercy. The human heart often resists what it cannot understand. When something doesn't go the way you expected, the immediate reaction is confusion, sometimes even frustration. You begin to question why things unfolded the way they did, especially when you felt you did everything right. You made dua, you tried your best, you had good intentions, so why didn't it work out the way you hoped? This is where the struggle begins, not just with the situation itself, but with accepting that there is a wisdom behind it that you may not be able to see. Your understanding is limited by what is in front of you. You see the present moment, a small piece of a much larger picture. You measure what is good and bad based on immediate outcomes, based on how something makes you feel right now. But Allah's wisdom is not confined to the present. It extends beyond what you can see, beyond what you can predict, and beyond what your mind can fully comprehend. What appears as a setback to you may actually be protection. What feels like a delay may be preparation. What seems like a loss may carry a hidden form of gain that you will only recognize much later. The difficulty is that the heart wants clarity before it finds peace. It wants answers before it feels settled, but faith doesn't always offer you immediate explanations. Instead, it asks you to trust the one who holds the knowledge. It asks you to believe that there is purpose even when that purpose is not yet visible to you. This is not easy, especially in moments of pain or disappointment. When something you deeply wanted is taken away or never comes to you in the first place, the heart feels heavy. It tries to make sense of it, to find a reason that will ease the discomfort. And sometimes that reason doesn't come right away. Sometimes it may not come at all in a way you can clearly recognize. That is where acceptance rooted in trust becomes essential. Accepting Allah's wisdom does not mean you stop feeling. It does not mean you suppress your sadness or pretend that things don't affect you. Rather, it means that alongside those feelings there is a deeper layer of certainty. A quiet reassurance within your heart that what has happened is not random, not careless, and not without purpose. That even if you cannot connect the dots now, they are being connected in a way that is ultimately for your benefit. When you begin to live with this mindset, your perspective shifts. You stop measuring everything solely by immediate results. You become less reactive to changes, less shaken by what doesn't go your way, because you start to understand that your role is not to decode every situation, but to respond to it with trust and patience. And in that space, your heart begins to find a different kind of peace. Not the kind that comes from everything going exactly as planned, but the kind that comes from knowing that even when things don't make sense to you, they are still unfolding under the care of a wisdom that never errs. There is a quiet tension that builds in the heart when it becomes attached to a specific outcome. You begin to tell yourself that peace lies on the other side of that one thing. If this happens, then I will finally feel settled. If this works out, then everything will be okay. Without realizing it, your emotional stability becomes tied to something uncertain, something that was never guaranteed to you. And the more you cling to it, the more anxious you become. Attachment in this sense is not just wanting something. It is needing it to happen in a particular way, at a particular time, for you to feel at ease. It turns a hope into a condition for your peace. So your mind keeps circling around it, replaying possibilities, imagining scenarios, trying to read into every small sign. You look for reassurance in things that cannot truly reassure you, because deep down you know that the outcome is still unknown. And that uncertainty feeds your anxiety. What makes this even heavier is that when your heart is attached in this way, every delay feels like a setback, every obstacle feels personal, and every closed door feels like a loss. You begin to interpret events not as part of a larger plan, but as barriers to the one thing you believe you need. And that perspective narrows your ability to see any Arabakhalif, Arabaklam, 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 Arabaklat, Arabaklat, Arabakrat that might exist outside of that outcome. Reliance on Allah, however, invites you to loosen that grip. Doesn't ask you to stop wanting or hoping, but it asks you to hold your desires with an open hand. To want something, to work toward it, but to also accept that if it doesn't come to you, it does not mean your life is lacking or that something has gone wrong. It simply means that Allah, in His knowledge, has chosen something different for you. When you begin to rely on Allah instead of outcomes, your heart shifts its source of stability. Instead of grounding yourself in something that may or may not happen, you ground yourself in the certainty that whatever Allah chooses is what is best. This doesn't eliminate uncertainty from your life, but it changes how you experience it. Uncertainty no longer feels like a threat, it becomes a space where trust is exercised. You start to approach your goals differently. You still plan, you still hope, but you are no longer consumed by the need for things to unfold exactly as you imagined. If something is delayed, you are able to wait without feeling like you are falling behind. If something doesn't work out, you are able to let go without feeling like you have lost everything, because your sense of worth and your sense of peace are no longer dependent on that single outcome. This kind of detachment is not weakness, it is a form of strength. It protects your heart from being shaken by every change in circumstances. It allows you to move forward with clarity rather than fear. And most importantly, it frees you from the constant pressure of trying to secure your own happiness through things that are ultimately outside your control. When your reliance shifts from outcomes to Allah, anxiety begins to lose its grip. Not because everything becomes certain, but because your trust is no longer placed in uncertainty, it is placed in the one who controls it. One of the most powerful shifts that can happen in a person's heart is when they move from knowing about Allah to truly knowing Him. Not just recognizing His names, but understanding. Ask what those names mean in the context of their own life. Because Arabic Kaf, Arabic Tet, Arabic Rat, Arabic Mim, Arabic Nun, Arabic Alif, Arabic Lam, Arabic Kaf, Arabic Lam, Arabic Kaf, much of the fear and anxiety you feel is not only because of what is happening around you, it is because of how you are perceiving who is in control of what is happening. When the future feels uncertain, when situations feel overwhelming, the heart naturally searches for something to hold on to. If it does not anchor itself in Allah, it will anchor itself in Arabic Alif, Arabic Lam, Arabic Nun, Arabic Alif, Arabic Sin. In circumstances and outcomes, all of which are unstable and constantly changing. And that is why fear increases. Because you are placing your sense of security in things that cannot guarantee you anything. But when you begin to reflect on the names of Allah, something inside you starts to realign. When you know that He is Al-Wakil, the one who is entrusted with all affairs, you begin to understand that you are not managing your life alone. That every detail, no matter how small or overwhelming it may seem, is under His control. When you know that He is Al-Alim, the all-knowing, you find comfort in the fact that nothing about your situation is hidden from Him, not your struggles, not your fears, not even the thoughts you have not spoken out loud. When you reflect on Him as Ar-Rahman and Ar-Rahim, you begin to realize that His mercy is not distant, it is surrounding you in ways you may not even recognize. And when you truly internalize that He is Al-Hakim, the most wise, it changes how you interpret everything that happens to you. You stop seeing events as random or meaningless. You begin to believe that there is a wisdom behind every delay, every difficulty, every closed door, even if you cannot fully understand it in the moment. This reflection is not meant to stay theoretical. It is meant to be personal. When you are going through something difficult, you remind yourself, which name of Allah applies to this situation? When you feel lost, you remember that He is Al-Hadi, the one who guides. When you feel Arabic Dada, Arabic Ten, Arabic Tet, Arabic Fa, weak, you remember that He is Al-Qawi, the most strong. When you feel like things are slipping out of your control, you remember that He is Al-Malik, the king who controls all matters. The more you connect your daily experiences to these names, the more your heart begins to settle. Because instead of reacting only to what you see, you are grounding yourself in who Allah is. And that creates a different kind of stability, one that does not disappear when circumstances change. Fear often comes from the unknown, from not knowing what will happen next, from not being able to predict outcomes. But when you strengthen your connection with Allah's attributes, the unknown becomes less frightening, not because you suddenly have all the answers, but because you trust the one who does. And this trust is what softens the Arabic kaf, Arabic lam, Arabic kaf. It quiets the overthinking. It reduces the Arabic hit, Arabic alif, Arabic shin, Arabic techno, the need to control it. Because deep down, you begin to feel that you are under the care of someone who is more knowledgeable, more merciful, and more capable than you could ever be. Many people spend their lives chasing a version of peace that is tied to everything going well. They tell themselves, once this problem is solved, I'll feel calm. Once I reach this goal, I'll finally relax. Once everything falls into place, then I'll have peace. But life doesn't work that way. There is always something uncertain, something incomplete, something that doesn't go according to plan. If your peace is dependent on perfect circumstances, then it will always remain just out of reach. This is where a deeper understanding begins to form. Peace is not found in the absence of problems. It is found in the presence of certainty. Not certainty about outcomes, but certainty about Allah. There is a difference between wanting control over your situation and having conviction in the one who controls your situation. One creates anxiety, the other creates stability. When your heart is constantly waiting for things to settle before it feels at ease, it becomes restless. Because the DNA is not designed to be perfectly stable. It shifts, it changes, it tests, it surprises. So if you attach your inner calm to something that is constantly changing, your emotional state will keep changing with it. One moment you feel hopeful, the next you feel anxious, then disappointed, then briefly relieved, and then worried again. It becomes a cycle that never truly settles. But when a person develops Arabic kaf, Arabic alif, Arabic mim, Arabic lam, Arabic it, Arabic nuna complete, ask deep certainty that Allah is managing every detail of their life, something profound begins to change. This certainty is not built overnight. It grows through reflection, through experience, through repeatedly turning back to Allah and seeing how things unfold in ways you could not have planned yourself. It is strengthened when you look back at your life and realize that even the moments you once feared or resisted carried some